technical because we've got Laura in Spain, Claire in England. We are in lockdown, so this is Zoom
International.
Live to Facebook.
We're hoping.
It does say at the top of my screen, live on Facebook.
I'm trying to get our Facebook live so that I can see if there's any comments, and
oh yeah,
that might be too technical for me.
Right, let me see if I can do that. Oh, grief. Anyway, hello everybody.
Today we are talking about sugar. It's Sugar Awareness Week.
We're talking about a couple of things today. We're talking about cervical cancer, because Cervical Cancer Awareness Week, or Awareness Day, something like that. There's a lot of awareness days and events in January, apparently. And we are also talking about sugar awareness.
We are, and we can potentially link the two, cervical cancer and sugar. So we can be discussing that. Yes.
That's going to be like one of those things where we just like tie up all the threads and go da 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 da, cha-ching.
Yeah, well, it's one of the reasons I love working with you, is because we go, but then if you did this and then 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 this, then that's the meaning of life.
That is true. I have got Facebook open so I can see comments, which feels brilliant.
Well done. Do you like my orange glasses?
You look so pinky fabulous. It's untrue.
They are my wow colour, don't you think?
They are your wow colour, and you've just sort of like pinky hue and like warm tones. It's lovely.
It's because I'm a sensitive nubbin, and if I have any bright lights or technical lights or before I go to bed, I can't sleep. So these are my blue light glasses.
And you're an hour ahead of us anyway.
That is right. So I am now 8:30.
It's very late for you. I've got those glasses, but then I can't use them with my glasses because that's just ridiculous. I've got this weird eye. I can't remember what it's called. It's called anosmia. I can't remember what it's called, but basically my eye won't tolerate things like colours and the lens, so I have to do one or the other. I'm not even doing
or either. Nothing at all. Just go for the glamorous
thing.
That's fine. That's fine.
Anyway, we have things to tell you about rather than Laura and I just having a chat. This is actually how Laura and I work by Zoom all the time now, and we always go back, got so much to talk about, and then we get on the call and then we're like, la 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 la, this thing happened, and then we go, have a work quick.
We do. There was something that we've got a competition, right?
We have got a competition. I feel like off of the 80s where you had those kids' TV shows on a Saturday morning, like Saturday Morning Swap Shop or Why Don't You? And like, got a competition!
We've got to bring a pie sale. We do have a competition.
We really do have a competition, and it's live at the moment on Instagram. And basically, go check it out. Because it was supposed to be finishing this week, but we've decided that January is so miserable. We're going to extend it until the end of January. So there is a chance. It's our corporate giveaway, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So we are giving away a free talk, I think it is, for corporate wellness. So go check it out because we're doing that. Hello, Debbie. Debbie's commented. She says she's got prescription glasses.
That's what you need. You need orange prescription glasses.
But she hasn't got the weird eye that just shuts down. Awful. Anywho, so yeah, giveaway. I've got a little list. Giveaway.
Yes,
check it done. And anybody you know who has a business where there's a lot of, with employees, where a workplace talk could be useful, please share the link with them. That's actually what you've got to do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing that I would like to talk to you about before we get into our topics this evening are, we are going to be doing these lives on a regular basis. And what we want to know from you is what you want from us. So we basically want to show up, give you the knowledge of our wisdom, and our ridiculously silly interactions in Laura's lovely glasses. And we really want to make it useful for you. So if you comment below on what it is that you want us to talk about, we will make it happen.
In the last few years, we've really specialized our discipline into 6 areas: blood sugars, adrenals, hormones, digestion, immune system, and emotional stress. And so if there's any subjects in those 6 areas that you want us to focus on.
So within the emotional stress, we talk about that being emotional transformation, i.e. you're feeling really unfulfilled, you're not in self-love, you don't feel empowered, all of that, or anxiety, depression, overwhelm, those. And for us, it's because we call it the hashtag guilty secret. So I've just recovered. I've spent 2 weeks recovering from COVID, which is, we were supposed to be doing these lives a couple of weeks ago, but I've been poorly with the COVIDs. So we started watching Cobra Kai. I know I was ill because there's just time in my life I'm never going to get back again. But the one funny thing is he keeps talking about the hash browns. You know, those hash browns something or another. So we have our own little hashtag, our hash brown emotion health connection. And because we talk about how without, as Laura was saying, these sort of 5 health pathways, the adrenals, the blood sugars, the hormones, the digestion, and the immune, if they aren't in balance, then we are going to end up with anxiety, depression, overwhelm. So there's such a connection. And with things like depression, if we don't eat right, our blood sugars become unstable, then we end up again, it's just the reverse. So we're really passionate about linking together how the body works. So let us know what you want us to talk about. But let's start talking about, where do you want to start? Sugar?
I think sugar. I think let's go sugar. I think one of the most interesting things about sugar is that people don't realize the carbohydrate is a sugar, and they don't realize what are carbohydrates.
Great point.
Do you want me to keep going, or do you want to take on?
Yeah, you go. Great point.
So carbohydrates are fruits, people know that, vegetables, grains, beans, pulses, chocolate.
Yeah, all the treats and sweeteners.
Absolutely.
Alcohol.
And one of the big things that we see with vegans, for example, who say that they eat plenty of pulses and grains because that's where they're getting their protein from. Yes, it has protein in, but it has a lot more carbohydrates, so it acts like a sugar in the body.
So yes, it will have protein, but there's predominantly carbohydrate. So when we eat it, the body first and foremost sees carbohydrate, which means that so one of the big wows that really landed for me a few years ago was, you know, I'd been a health practitioner for a decade by that point. I was eating really healthily, you know, everything I ate was healthy. I didn't eat refined sugar. I wasn't eating gluten. I wasn't eating dairy. I was, you know, eating organic, doing the do. But I hadn't ever made the connection that every time something goes into our mouth, our body produces a hormone in response to it. So if we eat something that is predominantly carbohydrate, the body will produce insulin in response. So when it produces insulin, we actually go into fat storage for a start. That's the first thing that's going to happen. Well, the body reduces our blood sugars. So it goes, oh, wow, sugar's coming, quick, produce something to counteract that. But the other signal that comes from insulin is fat storage. This is why people often go, but I'm eating really healthy and I'm putting on weight. I'm like, it's because you're predominantly eating carbohydrates, or you're eating too many carbohydrates. And they go, well, I don't know, not really. And then you go, well, do you eat fruit? Are you eating grains and beans? The other issue with using what we would consider a predominantly carbohydrate source for your protein is the body has to break that down to get to the protein. It's got to like dig down to get to the protein. The protein isn't easily available. And that can actually take quite a bit of time. The body has to digest it. It has to process it. Now, we have an interesting response that we keep looking for food until the body has the right amount of protein. So if that protein is going to take, I don't know, let's say an hour for your body to find it, to be able to break it down, for an hour you could have been searching for food. And if you're not actively eating more, the body is under stress thinking that not enough protein has come in. So by stress, we're then producing the stress hormone cortisol, and cortisol is highly inflammatory. So we end up with this roller coaster, don't we, of these opposing hormones, insulin, cortisol, insulin, cortisol.
And I've forgotten what I was going to say. We also have that interplay between insulin and estrogen. So estrogen is the big female hormone. We produce the sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And estrogen is involved in our cycle. There are cells in our body. All cells in our body have receptors for estrogen. Estrogen is not just for our periods. It is involved in lots of different things in the body. And when you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, when you're eating a lot of sugar, then that high insulin creates high estrogen in the body. So we've got this dynamic, and we talk about it as the triangle of hormonal health, that we have high insulin, high estrogen, and high cortisol.
Yeah. And that is where we end up in a bit of a pickle. This is where we end up with quite a lot of symptoms starting to manifest in the body. So I like to talk about the triangle of hormonal health being like a stool where the legs need to be, you know, perfectly balanced. But let's just say your blood sugars are unstable because you've been eating a vegan diet, not necessarily a vegan diet. You've been using quite a lot of high carbohydrate sources as your protein source, or just not eating mindfully, grabbing a bit of toast for breakfast, which is just carbohydrate, grabbing a sandwich for lunch, which is predominantly carbohydrate and not enough protein or fat. Your blood sugars are going to be unstable. So now our stool's gone a little bit wonky. And so we either have to rectify that, or by its very nature, that's going to then create this stress hormone imbalance. And as Laura's described, now we've got this stool that's all over the place. And something that's very interesting, which will lead us on to the cervical cancer conversation, is that so many people experience digestive complaints, and they go to the doctor about irritable bowel syndrome or even inflammatory bowel diseases. So, you know, I don't know anybody who doesn't talk about, oh, I can't eat that thing, or if I'm a bit stressed, I can't eat that, or I have these bloating, or I have constipation or diarrhea or whatever. It's so common. I mean, we used to say it was like 3 out of 5 people were diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome, but that means they've gone to the doctors and had a diagnosis. It's estimated that, you know, 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5 people experience digestive discomfort or digestive issues. So digestive system issues, huge. One of the main causes for people being off sick from work is digestive conditions. You then have the immune system issues. So this would be your cancers, your autoimmune diseases, your, what's the word I'm looking for? Metabolic syndrome, cardiac disease. This immune system response, inflammation in the body, again, massive. We've got hundreds of autoimmune diseases now, where we only used to have, you know, less than 100 30 years ago. We've hundreds now. But cancer going through the roof. I don't know if anybody these days is lucky enough to not be touched by the cancer story in their family or their friendship circle. It's everywhere. It's just everywhere. But the immune system and the digestive system we call them the victims. They're victims of this stool being wonky. Now, the great thing is that we can do something about the stool. We can balance our blood sugars. We can really be so hot on eating our proteins, making sure our carbohydrate balance is right. We can reduce our stress hormones, because I'm telling you, one of the key things I hear from people when they end up with a diagnosis of cancer is, wow, I now realize that actually nothing but my health matters. Nothing is as important as my health. So all of the things that we get ourselves caught up in terms of our stress and pressure and, oh my gosh, I must do that, and drama, wow, those things are not important when you're diagnosed with a horrendous condition. So we don't have to let them be important. before we get diagnosed with a horrendous condition. We have been absolutely societally pressured into thinking that stress is a good thing. And it is absolutely, you know, one of the main causes of why people are ill. So we can change that. And we can also change the effect of the sex hormones on our body. We can limit the amount that we're exposed to toxic chemicals that cause estrogen imbalances. We can change our sort of the fact that we're taking contraceptive pills. So there's a lot that we can do within that triangle. So these victims no longer are, you know, going to be where our symptoms manifest.
We bang on about blood sugars quite a lot, and if you look at the pancreas, it's well known for being the blood sugar insulin producer, but only 5% of its job is blood sugar production, blood sugar balancing, blood sugar dealing with. It's 95% digestive, and this is where we're seeing the connection between eating a high sugar diet or a high carbohydrate diet and the effect on the digestion. Also, high sugars has an effect on the microbiome. And when the microbiome is affected, so for example, in the small intestine where we absorb all of our goodness, if we're eating inflammatory foods such as carbohydrates, grains, sugars, then we can create inflammation in the small intestine, which creates the tight junctions in the small intestine become inflamed and become wider, that then leaks particles into the bloodstream, which triggers the immune system. So once the immune system is triggered saying, right, I don't know what this is, what I'm having to deal with, this is how we're seeing that when we have this hormone imbalance, when we've got high sugar, we've got high stress, we've got high estrogen, we've got low progesterone, when we've got this situation happening, this is how we're having an effect on the digestion and the immune system. And that's what Claire was saying about these two being victims. And so we can link back a lot of what we see in the clinic to carbohydrate diets. And we're not saying that carbohydrates are the devil. We need a balance of carbohydrates. Fruit and vegetables and some pulses, you know, are great for our health. And for example,
good rice.
The thyroid, which is an important part of hormone balancing and the metabolism, requires carbohydrates for health. So if we have no carbohydrates, such as a keto diet, then we're going to see symptoms elsewhere. But we need to bring carbohydrates and sugar into a balance.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So we've had a comment, which I'd just like to pick up on. Hello, Jane. Thank you very much for your comment.
Well done, Claire.
I know, I feel like I'm on it. So I'm going to read it out because you've just really highlighted this point. But it says, thank you so much for hosting a live chat. You're very welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Keen to know what you find are the main reasons for very irregular periods or skipping periods entirely. When I was younger, I went 6 months between periods and was put on the pill as a teenager. I only spent a few years on it as it didn't agree with me. Fantastic. Was diagnosed with potential PCOS years ago. For people who don't know, polycystic ovary syndrome. And diet and lifestyle changes have helped, but still occasionally have really emotional PMS and irregular periods. Loving your hormone path because, oh, I'm so delighted. Okay, so PCOS is an interesting one. Everything comes back to the triangle of hormonal health. So I'm always looking at what's going on with your blood sugar. So fantastic that you've done the work on your diet. I would still be really keen, again, like I said, not just it being a healthy diet, but making sure every single time you eat that there is a protein source, fat and carbohydrates. So by a protein source, it's very limited. Meat, fish, eggs. I'd say tofu or tempeh, but not in the case of PCOS because it can be highly estrogenic. And some people say that it can balance out estrogen, and some people say that it contributes to estrogen. Personally, I think let's not take the risk if we don't know which way it's going to go in a body that has an estrogen imbalance. Or the Get Out Gel Free cards, which are the vegan protein powders. So I personally prefer combinations of pea, hemp and rice blends. There's lots of companies that do them now, and it's because it's a much more assimilatable, easier to break down version of the protein. And yes, all those three things individually, pea, rice and hemp, are carbohydrates, but they're isolated proteins. They are a processed food, so a lot of whole food vegans don't like that. But they are a get out of jail free card, and you don't have to be vegan to eat them. I eat a protein shake every morning. So meat, fish, eggs, and I would steer clear of the tofu and tempeh and go with protein powders are the protein sources at every meal. So we pimp out our porridge with protein powder, almond butter, lovely, delicious. This is not a hardship. Making sure that at your lunch there is a full protein source. So yes, it is a whole, fillet of salmon. It's a whole chicken breast. So if you've bought a salad that's got a couple of flakes of chicken, that is not a protein balanced meal. We need to make sure it would be a whole tin of tuna. It would be, a decent chunk of protein. And then the same at dinner. And then if you're eating a snack, we don't just eat fruit on its own because we're going to spike the blood sugars. We're going to eat that, just offset it with some nuts, have it with some fats.
The other thing I'd be looking at with missing periods is stress, because of the pregnenolone steals. So the pregnenolone is a precursor hormone, and the body makes a decision on whether, if there is high stress in the body, then it will move it through the cortisol pathway and not through the progesterone pathway. And progesterone is required for a healthy bleed. So like Claire said, I would be looking definitely at your protein sources and balancing blood sugars. The next stage I'll be looking at is there high stress that needs to come down?
And it might not even be high stress in this case. If there is stress, definitely needs looking at. But you could be, because this hit you as a teenager, it could be that there was just something in your teens that meant that your body went into, we call it HPA axis dysregulation. It's when the body goes into a stress response, and that can just be a permanent response. And it, as Laura's saying, your body makes cortisol instead of making progesterone. It can be that simple. So there's lots of ways. So absolutely making sure we deal with those stressors. My experience is if you've been in that a long time, you're going to need something like an adaptogenic herb that I would definitely be working with a practitioner to find the right one. And you might even want to work with a practitioner who does bioidentical hormones, because you might even need something like some progesterone.
Did she say in the message that she's got our toolkit?
Yes, it'll all be in there.
We've got adaptogens. We've got a simple questionnaire in the toolkit that helps you decide which adaptogenic herb is best for you. So
genius.
Yes, I'd also be looking at some key minerals. I'd be looking at magnesium and zinc.
We're always looking at magnesium and zinc.
Yeah, particularly for periods, and it also helps with blood sugars. So I think those would be the key places that I'd be looking.
So the thing with PCOS is it's a really interesting condition because it's a bit of a misnomer. It's an umbrella term, and it doesn't even mean that you've got many cysts on your ovaries. It's one of those non-diagnosed, it's just a bit weird. There are 4 places that PCOS can come from. You can have insulin resistant PCOS. So you can develop PCOS because of insulin resistance. Insulin resistance happens because of a life spent, even if it's healthy food, eating, some people who just eat too much fruit can end up with insulin resistance. So it can be insulin resistant PCOS. It can be post-pill PCOS. The chances are, if it was just 6 months, it might not be that, but I've heard stranger things. So it could be that. It should be temporary, but if you've had it a long time, it sounds like it's probably not that. It could be inflammatory PCOS. Now, inflammatory PCOS is exactly what Laura was just talking about with the stress response, because when we are constantly producing cortisol and that HPA axis dysregulation and the pregnenolone steal and all the things we've just told you about, that causes inflammation in the body. So I would be looking at the stress in your life. I'd be absolutely making sure your foods are balanced. But the other thing we have to start looking at is food intolerances and toxic chemicals getting on and in our body. So what is causing the inflammation? Something is driving inflammation. Or the far less common is adrenal PCOS, which they used to put down as we don't really know what it is, PCOS. But again, adrenal PCOS, from my standpoint, is absolutely this triangle hormonal health. And it comes back down to, again, the emotional stressors, the chemical toxicity stressors, the food stressors.
I think we did a good job of answering that.
I think we did. I think we did. But come back to us with any other questions. So was there anything else about sugar? Because I think the thing with sugar is it's so damn addictive.
Yeah.
What we're not addicted to the sugar, we're addicted to the roller coaster. We're addicted to the insulin, which then drops to produce cortisol. As soon as it's dropped, our body goes, oh crap, my blood sugars are low, quick, eat sugar. Now I'm up here. We're addicted to this, not the actual sugar. But we do have to learn to wean ourselves off of sugar.
And there's a few ways that we do that. Number one, protein and fats are just such a gift because they help balance blood sugars. That, what you're talking about, that addictive, that is your blood sugars imbalanced.
Yeah.
So making sure that there is that balance of protein and fat in your diet is going to really help chemically control that addiction. And magnesium and zinc, I'm going to come back to those.
Magnesium and zinc. And also chromium. We talk about chromium here. So chromium is very much about sugar regulation. Magnesium and zinc are really interesting, aren't they? Because magnesium and zinc, I want you to imagine that every single cell of your body is like a nightclub or a really cool bar. And it's got two bouncers. And it's like everyone wants to get in, everyone's trying to get out, and it's all a bit of a jiffle. That's actually what's going on in your cells with insulin. So there's insulin resistance that we were talking about earlier. We've got sugar and we've got insulin trying to get in and out of the cells, and they get really confused. And exactly like a load of drunk people in a club who can't quite get in or out and don't know what they're doing, you need the bouncers to say, no, you're not coming in, or actually it's time for you to leave, and we've got too many people, and form an orderly line, people. Those bouncers on your cells, we anthropomorphalize everything, don't we?
It's the best way for it to land in my head is the stories.
So those bouncers are actually magnesium and zinc. So what's really brilliant is when we take the right magnesium and zinc for us, we actually make sure the sugar can leave, the insulin can leave, things can come in and out. But the other thing that's really important, and it's interesting, Laura, talking about fat, is that I then like to add an element to this analogy, don't I? And I like to talk about the escort who's going to escort you in and out of that bar.
What kind of escort are we talking about?
We're talking about omega-3, sexy. We're talking fish oil.
Sexy escort.
So omega-3 is a really unusual fat because it doesn't go through the liver. Everything in our bodies go through the liver. Omega-3 doesn't. It actually goes straight from the bloodstream into every cell of our body. It's why it's called an essential fatty acid, not a good idea fatty acid, or not when I couldn't be bothered or remember it, a fatty acid. So this is an escort. This actually really gets congestion, inflammation, insulin, sugar out of our cells and detoxes and cleans everything out. So I think, is there anything else?
I think we've done sugar pretty well. I'd quite like to do a bit of the cervical cancer.
I would too, but we have got a question which is from Debbie, which is, how do we detox? Willpower, question mark. And great question. I don't like the word willpower. I don't believe in willpower. I think it's a really good way for us to be not in a self-loving space and beat ourselves up. I believe in desire and I believe in discipline. And either we have the desire or we don't. And if we don't, we need to be really honest with ourselves. Actually, I don't really want to, I don't really care enough. I actually quite like it. Okay, there's the honesty. Do I want to change that? Okay, well, maybe I do want to change that. So where's the block? What needs to happen? For me, if we can't find the desire, it's about doing a bit of inner work. If we do have the desire, now we don't have the discipline, well, then this is actually another technique. This is about really sort of learning some sort of deep self-parenting techniques to go, okay, no, this is how I'm going to find the discipline. Today is the day that I'm going to allow, I'm going to have the sugar, or today is the day I'm absolutely not going to have the sugar. And when we can have a relationship with ourselves from a place of self-love, the external thing doesn't have such a hold on us. But equally, whilst we're detoxing, this is hard because we're in this place. Magnesiums, zincs, omega-3, making sure we're upping our proteins and fats, making sure we're having carbohydrates, but in the right amount. And the other thing we've not talked about, a few blood sugar hormones, because there's 5 of them, but there's a few that actually it takes 5 days to get them under control. So for 5 days, it's going to be tough. If you can ride it out for 5 days, keep going. I'm a big fan of, in the short term, using a little bit of something like xylitol, but small amounts, because it doesn't spike your blood sugar so much, or stevia. If you're a big sugar addict, you won't like the taste of stevia. And actually, it's a sign that you're over sugar cravings when you can actually tolerate stevia more.
Or find a dark chocolate that is more fat than carbohydrates. So check the back of the label to see if you can find something that is going to be not so sugary.
But it's the 5-day rule. If you can get over 5 days, you're home free. Because
this too shall pass. Just have that as your mantra.
This too shall pass. And I'll be honest, I really like something a little bit sweet after I've eaten. So that is my starchy carbohydrate. And having the sugar after you eat, and mine is a dark chocolate, but having it after you eat, you're not going to spike your blood sugars. You're going to be more stable. So thank you for those questions. Let's move on.
Cancer?
Cervical cancer. I mean, some of the stories we hear now are just, utterly heartbreaking. And I think I remember the story of Jade Goody really touched me years ago, where she'd not had any smears, as a lot of people don't. It's, why would it be on your agenda when you're a young woman, really? Yeah. And then it was, by the time she could actually feel a lump on her cervix, it was too late. Just horrendous.
So cervical cancer comes from the HP virus, which is a sexually transmitted disease. And interestingly, many of us have come into contact with it. And this is where we like to explore the immune environment. There are about 150 types of HP virus, and some can be a lot more damaging than others.
Well, coleslaw
is so damaging. But it's this, we like to look at the immune environment. This is something that I hope that we get to do a live about, because I feel so passionately about it, is that when we've got the right environment for pathogens, then they grow and increase and cause havoc in the body. And I was looking at the research in this, and there, interestingly, was a study in 2010 that showed that estrogen receptors, when there's high levels of estrogen in that area, and the cervix is incredibly receptive to estrogen, when there is high estrogen, it promotes cervical cancer with the combination of the HP virus. So we're coming back to this triangle again, that when we have high insulin, so this is the high sugar, we get high estrogen, which then creates this environment for the HP virus to populate.
Yeah. And then we know that any cancer in the body actually feeds them further off sugar.
Yeah, absolutely. There's they say that cervical cancer can come from a lack of fruit and vegetables in the diet. So this is coming back to the point that carbohydrates are good for us. We do need fruit and vegetables in our diet to be able to get the flavonoids, the vitamins. And when we don't have them in our diet, then we do have an immune system that is more compromised. People who've got compromised immune systems are more susceptible to getting cervical cancer. And so we like to promote things like cabbage and broccoli, which is also great at supporting the body to detox estrogen effectively. So yes, fruits are wonderful, but if you're eating a lot of them, then you're going to get that insulin imbalance. So head more towards the vegetables like your cabbages and your broccoli, which are high in the flavonoids, but also in DIM, which is going to help you process your estrogen better.
Yeah. What Laura's just talked about is a chemical in those vegetables called diindolylmethylene, which actively helps the liver. It's the chemical that the liver uses to break down estrogen and detox it out of our body. So DIM is a really powerful thing. And I know when I was pregnant, the smell of broccoli made me want to heave.
Me
And
too.
it's because you need the
First trimester.
yeah,
Totally.
estrogen. Yeah, the body's like, it doesn't want the DIM to take your estrogen away. It's trying to, create the right environment for pregnancy. So a lot of women go, broccoli makes me feel sick. It's like, yeah, it will do. You're trying to hold on to your estrogen. It's really interesting. So
there was another fascinating study that I think is really important, 2016 study that showed that one of the risk factors for an increase in cervical cancer is the contraceptive pill.
Oh, of course, because the thing with with contraceptives and HRT is it's such a sledgehammer amount of those hormones. So it's just such an overload of very, very, very active estrogen. Now, most of us are experiencing estrogen dominance. It's actually where a lot of symptoms are coming from today. A lot of obesity is predominantly an estrogenic imbalance. It's why you see men with the man boobs. It's estrogen imbalance. It's why when women are putting on weight now, it's all very busty and sort of very bum. It's all piling into places where estrogen lives. So it's this estrogen dominance. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the contraceptive pill is going to be putting in so much of that estrogen.
And then we've got the issue that taking the pill each day is affecting the gut microbiome.
Oh yeah.
And the gut is responsible for detoxing our estrogen. The liver is also responsible for detoxing our estrogen. So if the liver is having to deal with high levels of estrogen, high levels of cortisol, high levels of insulin, then it's going to be overwhelmed and it's not going to be able to process that properly. So that's when you start to see, again, that estrogen piling into the breasts and into the bum, and when we're starting to see higher levels of cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. And
because it knocks out the immune system.
And of course, it's in our water. Because the amount of people taking contraceptive pills, then we wear out, it's actually in our water supply. So estrogen is everywhere. So yeah, there is a connection between sugar and cervical cancer. What do we suggest doing to avoid? So we've said about vegetables. I would be saying filtered water, absolutely 100%.
Yeah, I would review your contraception.
Avoiding toxic chemicals. So I go on about that, avoiding toxic chemicals, and I go on about that. But there are chemicals in toiletries called endocrine disruptor chemicals, which means they disrupt your glandular system, which means your hormones. So they are actually causing hormone disruption. So by cleaning up your toiletries and going for organic, so very clean toiletries, you won't be having the estrogenic impact on the body. And yeah, lots of organic where you can, that's important. So I think anything else you want to say about that? Are we good?
No, I think that's it. I think we've covered our subjects. Is there any more comments that we need to replace?
Yeah, there's sauerkraut, because sauerkraut for everything, fermented vegetables is one of the always. It's one of the best ways of getting good probiotics in the gut, and also the fermentation is fantastic. And of course, sauerkraut is cabbage, so it means we're getting the DIM as well.
Great.
So we're passionate about wanting to get our work out to people. And so what we did in the first lockdown, which feels like forever ago now, is we created our symptom assessor. So if you go to iwanttofeelbetter.co.uk, or you'll see it on all of our social media or on our website, the symptom assessor is designed to save you hundreds of pounds of seeing a therapist. So it's designed very cleverly. You get asked a series of questions, which just takes a couple of minutes, and it will tell you which hormone pathway you need to work on. Do you need to be balancing your blood sugars? Do you need to be dealing with your stress? Do we need to be dealing with your sex hormones? Is it digestion? Is it immune? And once we've found out which one it is by the very brilliant questions we've asked, then you're actually given the option to buy the toolkits to fix them. And they are a thing of beauty. They are beautiful. A diet, the protein, fats and carbs diet sheet with an explanation. You get the supplement sheet, the stuff that Laura was talking to you about, with how to find the right adaptogenic herb for you, how to find the right magnesium for you, the links where to get them, which is a separate company from us. It's all very non-biased. Absolutely, we're so passionate. It is all of us, our combined 25 years of experience in the clinic in this one symptom assessor. And the toolkit is really cheap. It's under 50 quid. The idea is it saves you hundreds of pounds seeing a therapist, and you're doing all the foundational work. It's just genius, isn't it?
Oh, it's a thing of beauty. We also have lifestyle recommendations. We've got a recipe collection in there, and we've got a 3-hour hormone masterclass.
Yeah, there's everything in there, isn't there?
There's everything. It's just it makes me want to cry. I love it so much.
Yeah, it's a massive amount that you're getting for your money. So, but go check it out and just see if it resonates. So that's on iwanttoFeelBetter.co.uk, or quite frankly, every single account we have everywhere.
Symptomassessor.co.uk is another one. That takes you straight to the questionnaire, so you can find out which pathway.
Oh, great. Okay, symptomassessor.co.uk. So please comment below about what you would like us to talk about. We have got a couple more questions. Which brands of magnesium, zinc and omega-3 do you use? Great question. We actually don't necessarily use specific brands. We use specific types of magnesium. There are hundreds of types of magnesium, but as a general rule, if you have really sensitive bowels or diarrhea, loose bowels or they're sensitive, opt for magnesium glycinate. It's also called magnesium biglycinate. If you have constipation, we would be really recommending magnesium citrate, citrate. And if you just get the kind of muscle twitches, you're very fatigued, you can't sleep, you've got restless legs, you've got anxiety, you've got going around in your head, then we'd be recommending more a magnesium malate. We actually send people to, I think it's cytoplan.co.uk, NutriAdvanced, but there are some, there's
we like
nutrition, but there's loads of great brands out there. I would just say that for any of them, don't go to Holland and Barrett, because they tend to be they're not batch tested to say that what is in there is what you're getting, and they're not therapeutic tested.
They're also synthetically produced, so your body doesn't process them in the same way. I've had clients who've taken iron supplements from cheap iron supplements and put them out the other side.
Yeah. So, and then with omega, I would be saying it kind of doesn't really matter. There are vegan omegas out there, because actually the only reason we've got omega-3 in fish is because the fish eat the algae. So you can now get omega-3s that are algae based. But what I would definitely be saying is don't get omega-6, don't get omega-9. We have too much of that in the diet. It causes inflammation. It's the omega-3 we need. So it's either fish based or it's an algae based. But again, you get what you pay for. I could be very descriptive, but we haven't really got time, of why a 99p omega is literally full of dirt, and it's been shoved. It's the smashed in fish on the bottom of a pile that's being shoveled off the floor. Don't buy it. Buy a really decent one. You're looking, anything over a tenner basically for a good omega-3.
And we recommend omegas, magnesiums, which types are right for you in the toolkits.
Brilliant. And zinc, specifically, we've been asked about, so the same brands for those, but specifically for zinc, this difference between ascorbate and citra. It's not so important with zinc to find those differences. With zinc, I would be saying just make sure it doesn't cause an upset stomach. That's it, really. But magnesium's so key with how differently it works. Zinc, not so much. So yes, Jane says she's been heavily recommending our symptom assessor and toolkit to friends because it's totally fab. Knew lots of the info, but it's a sense of a jigsaw slotting together blew my mind how much sense it made. Thank you. You're so welcome, and thank you for that feedback, because that is exactly what we were trying to do. So that's
Oh, warm and
right up there.
fluffy.
Well, we will love you and leave you, and we will see you next week. So please do come back to us. I'm just quickly scrolling through because I don't think I've missed any comments. If I have, we will answer in the comments section. Lovely to see you, Laura.
Oh, lovely to see you, Claire. See you soon, darling.
See you soon. And we'll see you all next week. Now you're going to do a technical thing and stop it, aren't you?
Hopefully.